Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. In this video, I sit down with Jeremy for the second time, and this time we focus on how to break down a data use case. Check out the description, you'll find different time slots, you'll find different topics that we brought up. Jeremy prepared a use case, and that is the one that we go through. And then we just discuss, how can I derive business value from the process that goes when you try to solve a use case from the beginning to the end. See you again.
Good to see you too.
We spoke last time, and then we mostly focused on to learn a little bit more about you, where you are today. And one of the things that you pointed out is that you want to talk about how to break down a data use case. So I thought we would do that today. I've tried to challenge you to come up with a good use case, and you sent me this one. So I was thinking you can start, just read us through this, and then we can try and have a good discussion about how to break it down and go into this.
Okay, yeah. So it says, hi, we're looking to find products that sell in combination with our top performing items per category to add to our e-commerce website. This would be found by looking at the sales relationships from our retail sales, looking back in the last year. This would be given to us as either a dashboard or a report, so we can decide on which of these recommended items are added to the website. Let me know if you need anything else, Joseph.
Okay, cool.
And how do you think we should break this down, Ollie?
So, if we think back to last time, in terms of, we kind of figured out, or we established that you have quite a lot of ownership. You can look at this business or this use case from quite a few different angles, and you actually have the freedom to look at the process of how the data is coming in. You have the freedom to look at how to transform it, and you also have the freedom to actually shape what you want it to kind of come out as a result. And I think that's really good, because that gives you a lot of ownership in terms of how you can approach this use case. So we just look at it. I just need to look. So we are looking to find products that sell in combination. So I'm just going to mark that off with our top performing items per category to add to our e-commerce website. Okay. This would be found by looking at the sales relationship from our retail sales. And you want to kind of give a recommendation based on how it performed last year. Either a dashboard or a static report is what I take this as, so we can decide on which of these recommended items are added to the website. Okay, so let me know if you need anything else. So the first thing that I always kind of try to figure out is, are we doing this today in any shape or form? That's the first thing I want to know, because I want to start to look at the process that they are doing today. And we spoke about this quite a bit last time, and there's kind of what I said about the ketchup effect, in terms of you're getting the data that enables something, you transform it, that enables something, and you present it, that enables something. So the first thing I would do is I would try to let's say Joseph, he is the head of e-commerce, or he is the head of something like that. He has some sort of ownership. I would probably ask him and say, okay, are you guys doing this today? Yes or no? And who is doing this today? And then I would start to think in terms of those different steps. Get the data, add the logic, or determine the logic and present it. And the first thing I would focus on is see, okay, if they're not doing it at all today, then it becomes a total different thing. So that is my first. It's very much a binary question. So what do we assume? Are they doing it today, or they're not doing it today? Are they doing it in some shape or form, or not at all?
Yeah. So I think in this case, I'd probably say they do it in some shape and form. So I think how it would most likely be is that there's somebody who understands the industry a lot, who can kind of make those gut checks and say, okay, for these items, I know that these items also get bought with it. So I'm thinking an example would be in normal retail, maybe be like if you bought napkins, you probably also bought toilet paper, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's some people who have that industry knowledge, but there's nothing built out in terms of like a data standpoint of making those recommendations automatically.
Okay, so we can say that they're doing it, but they don't really have a fully structured approach from
That's a great way of putting it.
the beginning to the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I start to think in terms of structure and enablement as we go. So the first thing I would say is, okay, you guys are doing it today. Show me how you're getting the data. That's what I would do first, because I know if I can automate that they get the data, then what am I enabling? I'm enabling the possibility of transforming it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my first thing. Okay, are they getting the data? How are they doing it? Exporting it from my system, or they get the data in some sort of automated fashion? Maybe you guys have like a e-commerce tool or CMS or some sort of interface where you guys can get at some of these stuff, or you guys have sales data in your CRM system where you can get at some of this stuff. That's the first thing I would do. I would make sure, let's automate the first part so that we get the data every single day. And that's kind of like just kind of put that, because I don't want the people who work on this webpage, I don't want them to spend a lot of time getting the data. So that's the first
Exactly.
thing. So I have like a process thing here. So the first part is just getting the data. And I would ask myself, are you getting it today? Yes or no? Can it be automated? And the reason for that is, we spoke about it a little bit last time. There's technical aspects, and then there's business value. And the business value here is if you can automate it, then you can save time. That's that, and of course you can enable the possibility to do this with a good time turnaround, so that it's how can we say this? So that you can actually start to think about the transformations. Because transforming data with a manual extraction process is totally doable. But what's going to happen is that you're going to extract some data. Let's say you're really good at transforming data, but you're not good at creating integrations. So you say to them, yeah, I can do this for you guys, but someone needs to push the extraction button every single day. And let's say you run with that. At some point, you're going to create a really good, you're going to transform it well, you're going to present it well in Power BI or whatever, and they're going to really start to like it. Then they're going to come back and say, maybe they want to scale it, maybe they want more data points, maybe they want to expand on it. And then you've created a very strong dependency against that extraction point, and it's not automated. So that's the first thing I would do whatsoever. So, there's nothing here about, but you can say looking to find. So I would ask myself, okay, can we get this automated? Probably yes. And then I would ask myself, okay, what are the things that I need to make sure that we can get out in an automated fashion? So we have products, we have
sales data,
we have category. Not too worried about the e-commerce website, because that's where you guys are going to put the action. Sales data, you need to make sure that you have enough history. Okay, so let's write down those things so we have products. So I can just start to mark it off. I'll mark it off in a different color here. Let's see if I can make this in a good way. So we have products. Then we have category, sales data. Last year also. Great. So let's say that you then you tell Joseph, yes, I think we can start to look at this. What I need from you then, I need someone to help me figure out where can I get the products, where can I get the categories, where can I get the sales data. And because you have enough ownership to be able to actually fetch it, you just need to make sure that the person who is doing this today can verify that you're getting the right stuff. And you also need to make sure that these categories are not being done in a manual step somewhere, that it actually comes from the source system. Same with these products.
going back on what you just said there, like, so I like the step where you're talking about make it go back to the person who does it and have them do their gut check and say, okay, if it lines up with what you were expecting, that's good proof of saying, okay, now we can move forward with the rest of the process.
Yeah, because if you like last time we spoke quite a bit about trying to kind of um, increase the understanding and the adoption and the culture of this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you check off with the person who's kind of like the main person who's doing today, and you say, hey, like this is the products that I find. Is that the products you do? Is that the products that you kind of expect? Great.
Mm-hmm.
These are the categories. Is that what you expect? This is the sales data. Then you have kind of verified that you're getting the right data, you can get it automated. And if they add products or they add categories, then they will also understand, oh yeah, he spoke about that last time. We looked at these categories, he verified that these are the categories. So then they will
Mm-hmm.
know that if they add a new category, it's part of that flow.
Mm-hmm.
It's also really important that you don't become like a product data manager or a category data manager, that
Mm-hmm.
you're showing them, I want to automate this step, and this is where it comes from, this is what it looks like for you in the CRM system, this is what I get
Mm-hmm.
out.
Gotcha.
So that is kind of the first thing that I always ask myself, can I automate it, yes or no? Are there any manual dependencies when they get the data? And
Mm-hmm.
who is doing it today? And can you just show me what is the first step you do to get it out?
Mm-hmm.
I work quite a bit at my company where they use CRM, and there you have a function called Advanced Finder in Microsoft CRM, which is basically how you can extract data with certain filters, and it's more or
Mm-hmm.
less quite similar to a where clause. That's
Okay.
basically what it's doing
Yeah.
there. And the reason I usually tell them, they usually take this out and then they use that data to do something else. And I usually tell them, can you show me the advanced find that you do for this? And then I can see quite clearly, okay, this is the products that they check off, these is the categories, this is the range you select in the sales data. And when you kind of connect them and you explain to them, yeah, I'm going to do the same that you're doing here, but I'm going to do it in an automated fashion somewhere else. But these are
Mm-hmm.
the same things. Then you're kind of getting that first process checked off. And once again, if we think in terms of enablement and value, the value is that, my bad, the value is automate extraction, which is a
Mm-hmm.
technical value, save time, align with business on expectations of what they will get,
Mm-hmm.
and enable next step, which is to add business logic. Yeah. So that's the first part. And if any of these things if this can't be automated, then I'm usually very careful with going forward in the process, because you might
Mm-hmm.
end up creating something really good, but you might also create a very strong dependency towards getting the data out continuously.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You don't want to be bogged down by having to do this manually all the time.
you don't want to
Yeah.
create a like a bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, if you and this is kind of where I say, each step is kind of like a enablement for something else. When you get this into Power BI and you show them this, it's going to take 2 weeks before they come back and they say, oh, can we do this? Can we do this?
Mm-hmm.
Can we add this table? Can we do this?
Mm-hmm.
And if the first part is a bottleneck, that bottleneck is not only going to grow, it's going to take more time, but the dependency and the expectations of fulfilling that task is going to increase as usage increases. And that's something I'm
Mm-hmm.
really careful with.
Mm-hmm. No,
Um,
that makes a lot of sense.
so like I'm in meetings and I will say, I understand what you want. It will be a great report. I know how to transform it. But if we can't do the first step, I'm not going to do it, because you're going to create a strong dependency towards me and my team. And we can't deliver on that.
Mm-hmm.
Most stakeholders, they will understand that. Or
Mm-hmm.
I will go back and I will say, we can do it. Then you need to find someone in your department to take ownership, to put that file into this folder every single day before 9 a.m. Otherwise, you don't get that data updated. And it's super important. Unless you want to become that person and you want to create that expectation, you do not go into that. So the first step is kind of just exploring, understanding, mapping out, kind of seeing, okay, this is the first step. And then I always ask myself, what does this enable? What does this enable? What does this enable? What does this enable? And I try to keep, I try to think about value a lot of different aspects, not only technical value, but in terms of business value. And there's a lot of different ways to create business value. So that is the first thing that I would ask myself. So let's say that you get that checked off. You get the right tables. You have automated it, and you now know how they do the first thing. The next thing then is where you need to kind of start to figure out some things. And then, you need to ask yourself, and this is where I think, so I work a lot in Power BI. And I think a lot about, does this belong in the transformation or the calculation language? Because they have different purposes. They have very specific different purposes. And what you're trying to do, I'm just going to do this real quick. You have to let me know if you're trying to find products that sells combination, okay? You want to know top performing items per category. And then this explains a little bit of what you're trying to do. So let's just let's not think about dashboards, not think about getting the data. Let's think about how do we get this in place. So once again, I would ask them, are you guys doing this today? If you're doing it, show me how you're doing it so I understand what are their expectations, right? If I were to just look at this from kind of my own experience, I would say that you could probably in SQL here, find products. You will probably need to find either some, sales orders data and look at which products are sold the most, and on the same receipt, which other products are usually found on that, and you can group by and create a unique combination. You can count it. That's like a technical way of how you can do it. But that doesn't mean that is how they expect you to do it. So I would actually ask them, once again, show me how you're doing it today. Are there any steps in there that are manual, which you don't think you could recreate? And this is where things get interesting. If there are, then you need to say, okay, I have the flexibility of DAX and Power BI. I have SQL. This is how I would do it in a data-driven way. And then there's, this is kind of like where you kind of have to go to work. This is where the data analyst stuff comes in. I would say that what I would do is I would top perform items per category.
Maybe we could simplify. Yeah, you could probably simplify it to say like top 100 items per category. So just that way you have a finite base.
No, but I will probably try to do this in DAX, to be honest.
Okay.
I might have, I might create a view where I find the categories or the products that have been sold the most, which honestly, like there's different ways you can do this. It depends. It really depends. Because products that sell in combination, you probably look at the orders or the sales orders.
Yeah, you'd probably have to look at the receipt itself and say per receipt, check this if this item's here, then see what else was on it.
Yeah, maybe and this is where you have to go into exploration mode. Maybe you want to have the top 100 products. If we put away categories for now, because product is a lower detail level than category, right?
Yeah.
So if you solve it on product level, you are more or less solving on category level. It's just grouping it up or down. Yeah. So I would technically, I would probably say, find the products that have sold the most, and then you get those. Then on each product, or on each order for those products, look at the receipt, find out what was the second most expensive item on that receipt.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can even say for each receipt, which one of these products on the receipt is one of those 100 most sold products, and then create a rank on the other stuff that is on the same receipt according to the amount that is.
Mm-hmm.
And you can create different combinations. That's one way you can do it. And if you think back to what we spoke about last time, stepping stone, right? Maybe the first step is just to find the most expensive item, or the 100 top product, and find the second one that always, the second most expensive. Maybe that's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the next step is to rank every single stuff that is on the receipt next to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like another thing on the advancedness of it. And maybe the third thing is to actually find a price elasticity package in Python, where the setting is that, so price elasticity is basically what this is. You want to know, you sell one thing, what is the chance of you selling something else? And you want to show those at the same time. That's probably how I would try to look at the transformation thing, but there's different ways to do this. And that's where you kind of need to look at what is my toolbox, time, what is the advancedness.
And I think thinking about other people watching this, it also depends on like what tools you have available at your company at all, which makes a massive difference here. So
for sure. But if we think about, we spoke quite a bit about last time, and my focus was very much, you don't need to go 0 to 100, right, to create value. Look at what they're doing today. Maybe they're doing this manually, and just look at it. Maybe your first step is to say, hey, I understand the steps you're doing now. You showed it to me. Let me just automate those steps. Let's just automate those steps. Great. You don't have to spend more time on it, because what have you done then? You have automated the first step, you save time. Automated the second step, you save time. And then you can say, I've automated these steps for you. Now you can spend a lot more time on planning this on the website, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to treat it as a stepping stone. And remember, as you're learning, they are learning. And in terms of enablement, if you can enable the first step, which is getting the data, then you can spend a lot more time on this step, which is transforming the data. And that is where the question is for this use case. That is where the issue is, right?
Yeah. I think the transformation part is definitely the most difficult portion of it.
Yeah. But you have to ask yourself where, this is also why I'm so obsessed with saying you got to learn the calculation language. You got to learn the calculation language, because the calculation language will give you a lot of flexibility combined with filtering and visualization. But SQL, the backend stuff, will set a standard, and then you have to work with that standard in Power BI or whatever visualization tool.
Gotcha.
So here you kind of have to look at what they're doing. Think about, can I automate it? Yes or no? Maybe I want to start with that. And then you can say, while you guys are using this for 2 weeks or a month, I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to go back to my desk, and I'm going to see if I can improve this process for you guys. Maybe introduce a version 2 or version 3 down the line. So that's probably how I would approach this add the business logic step. So how are you doing it today? Maybe level 1. Can you recreate and automate what you are doing today? Level 2. How can I improve what you guys are doing today? Accuracy. Maybe it can be, accuracy, granularity, which is you can cover more parts of it. Flexibility. Level 3. How can we make it more, let's call it professional or advanced? Add a Python package for price elasticity. Let's say that's kind of how we think about this. And I always think in terms of enablement. I have to figure out the first part. I have to make sure that works in a scalable, correct enablement fashion, and then I move to the next. Then when I
So
do the
I
same.
actually kind of have a question on level 3 here because I'm curious how you think the best approach would be. Like, let's say you did add a Python package.
Mhm.
Would you be uploading that to the database and pulling it then, like having a two-step process where you get the numbers in Python, add it back to the database, then pull
Yes,
it down?
probably.
Okay. I was just curious if you did it that way or if you put it directly into Power BI because I know you can do some scripting in there, but I personally never worked with it that way before.
I would probably, if we think in terms of steps, extract into a database table, database into a staging table,
Hmm.
and then you have a flow where the staging table pushes it to Python, and Python pushes back to a different table.
Hmm.
So you have one place where you get the result of the packet. You have one place where you have the data unspoiled. Then you create a common place where you join those together and you present that.
Gotcha.
That's at least how I would do it
Hmm.
unless you're extremely good with Python packages and you're extremely good with integrating into Power BI. But if you do it in Power BI, then you are kind of at the mercy of the the scalability and the power of Power BI, as that's where a lot of the processing happens. But
Hmm.
I feel like data transformation processing should happen in the data warehouse because that's where you can leverage scalability and the power it takes to do it.
No, I think that's a really good way of putting it because I think one thing as somebody who's newer in the industry is like I think that the optimal solution type step is sometimes more difficult to understand because it'll be like I'm pretty good at finding an answer. Finding the best way of making it scalable is sometimes more difficult.
Yeah.
So that's really good insight on that part. Hmm.
Just because it is possible to do Python stuff in Power BI doesn't mean that's the right place for you to do it.
Hmm.
And some people do stuff where they are the most comfortable, and Power BI is a really great tool. It can definitely transform. You can definitely do this, but you have to think in terms of scalability. And when I
Hmm.
say that, when I say scalability, one is, if you guys put this into production, maybe you guys want more data, more column, more tables, other things. Maybe one day they come and say, "Hey, we have a new person join our team," and then you want to kind of have this at the right place where maybe there's more common knowledge in SQL in terms of this. Maybe one day they say that, hey, you've actually created a really good flow here. Now we have a view where you have the clean data and a place where you combine the Python stuff. Maybe it's not supposed to go to Power BI. What if we're actually coming to this later? What if they come back and say, hey, we've been doing this for so good for so long. Now we have it in Power BI. But how can we get this directly from Power BI into our e-commerce webpage so we don't have to do that last manual step? Then you got to
Hmm.
make sure you have the logic at a place where you can integrate it to other places.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there too. Because like on Power BI, unless you had it in one master report or something like that, those DAX calculations aren't going to transfer from one place to another. So you'd have to redo all of that stuff each time you're using that same logic.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. You would have to go and select, yeah, like, so it's important to think, not only think, you have to, and this is how am I going to say, this is why I say that you're at a place where you can be so much more than a data analyst. You can be a true enabler,
Hmm.
a lot of other things. That's what I mean here. So you got to be a little bit pragmatic about where do you put stuff, why do I put it there. um, so the transformation step here can be very important in terms of cleansing the data, preparing and keeping it in a place where you can push it on somewhere else.
Hmm.
um,
Gotcha.
and then we kind of, if we go back to the use case, now we kind of have, we have the data, we have added some of the logic, and maybe we decide to use Python, we have that together. Then you kind of have to go back to the use case, and then you have to ask yourself, and I guess you have to ask yourself also, what can I do? Like, what skill set do I have in? So let's just go back. What skill set do I have in DAX to solve this? What skill set do I
Hmm.
have in SQL to do this? What is the level of value that I create if I do it in SQL versus in Power BI, it might be good enough to do it in Power BI first, use DAX for it. And then when the day they come back and say, we want to leverage this in another system, then maybe you say, yeah, I can do that. But then I don't have that same flexibility or skill set to replicate that. I can do it in the transform step, but then this is the output that you get from it. Then you got to cross that bridge as you get there. So I always think in terms of enablement, next step, what kind of dependencies am I creating? Also, once again, it's important to have this dialogue with the end user, the person who's doing this today, to explain and then gradually turn up the heat on this. And don't be afraid of suggesting things and saying, I'm only willing to take this far because this is as far as I can take it, in a way where you guys get it automated with better accuracy than before, and you guys can spend more time on using the data. That is a much better value proposition than saying, yeah, okay, let me try and figure out how I can get this into Python, get you guys the best results in human history, but it will take me 3 months.
Yeah. I think, because timeline makes a big difference too, being able to get back to them in a way that it's still useful information, because they might not even care in 3 months and you might lose the value of the project altogether.
Yeah, and you might be taking it too far. They might not be ready for it. They might not understand it. So, I'm very much a person who's a huge fan of incremental gains and incremental wins versus that, like the agile versus the waterfall mindset of it is something that I always look for. And there's so many times where I've been in meetings, I've gotten suggestions, and then I can tell, oh, now they're going to ask for something else. And I tell them, no, this is good enough for now. Use it for a month, and I'll catch you later. And then we'll see if this actually makes a difference. So that's a little bit about how I think, maybe in terms of the business logic, and a little bit of my thoughts on that. Then the last part is where things can get quite interesting, which is, dashboard or a report. And one thing, so we can decide on which of these recommended items are added to the website. And this is where you can take stuff a little bit further also. If you can manage A and B and it's automated, there's no doubt about it, it needs to go into a dashboard.
Yeah, okay.
For sure. So if A or if step get data and business is automated and fulfills requirements of business value, then get it into a dashboard. That's where I would start, because it's, the dynamics of it, the visualization. In this case, you add a product, you add a product filter, you add a category filter, and then maybe you could have had a bar chart or a table where you count the different combinations that, or you cluster the different, this product is very often sold with this, etc. You visualize that, and then for them to only be able to filter and look at that over time in those products and categories would be huge. That's what I would do. If I were to consider it as a report, then I would consider that if they are interested in, when they are going to add the recommended items in the website, whatever software you guys use, then I would say I can actually export this data in the format that you guys need when you import it. So you can use the Power BI part to look at it and decide, what are the right ones. And I wouldn't create like a static report in terms of one that they get sent to the email. I would say what I will do is I will actually create a table in Power BI, which has, let's say, the columns with the correct columns names, which you need when you import it into the website. And then you guys can actually go in, you can filter what you need you can see what it means. And in the table below, there will be the result of the filtering with the right columns, so that they can just export that and import that into the website.
Yeah, like a drill through details page. Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And a table where, so often when you have a website or something like this, you want to import a list of something, right? So you can create a table where the columns have the right columns names the software expects, the right number of columns, and the right type of formatting. So then you've actually created kind of like a dashboard to explore, but also to filter down the exact use case that they want, and they can import that into the website.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense too, because I think in this case that e-commerce import is a huge time saver for them if they don't have to even though if they have all the data, if they don't need to break it apart and delete columns or change it themselves, it's already transformed to exactly what they need. That's a really good take on it.
And actually, where you can challenge them is that you can establish this process where they can do this today with private. They can look at it visually, they can see what are the good combinations, they filter down, they export and import it into the e-commerce page. That's kind of the first stepping stone. If that gets established as a practice, then you can actually go to this guy Joseph and you can say, hey, I've actually, right now we're getting data automated, we're getting the right data automated. This was the business value. We have added the business logic, and that is right. It saved you all a lot of time there. We have created a dashboard where we have enabled you guys to see it visually, and we also have this export table now. The last bonus point, would actually be how am I gonna have this on this bad boy? Okay. This is not something that you are supposed to think about, but because you're going to become an enabler and you are someone who understands data, the next step you can go then and say is that bonus point, integrate, or let's call this automate, integration, export, and e-commerce. And that's something that, once again, we have to think enablement, business value, business value. So challenge Joseph to help you find someone who can automate the process of exporting from Power BI and push to e-commerce web page. This is totally doable, but then you are actually stepping a little bit outside of your own domain, which is integration and data push. But it is something you can come back and say to them. That's something I will do. If I notice that you've created value along the entire chain, and they are now doing this manually, the last step here is literally just when you press that export button, can we create some sort of integration which will push this to the e-commerce page, so that is the last step automated, and then you have automated the entire flow. That is the last thing that I would come back and say, or I would tell him, hey, I appreciate what we've done here. In terms of where I live, this is my domain. By the way, this can be done, but you need to find the resources. You need to make the request for the resources that we have in the company to do this, or else I need help. I can get you guys, or you can say, I have established the automated data extraction. I have added on the transformation. I have found a place where you guys can present it and drill in it. I have given you guys a table where you can export it. This is possible, but it doesn't fall on me. But if you're interested in this, I can help you drive this. That is the last thing that I would do here.
Yeah, no, and I think that breaks down the steps of how to bring a lot of value, especially with, I think one good thing, and that's part of the agile process, but because you're building value not in only the final product, but the steps to get to the final product, it helps the business a lot more. which I think that's really good.
And I think one thing is, and we have to be a little bit selfish. You have to be a little bit selfish. You have to think about, who does Jeremy want to be in the company?
Mm-hmm.
Does he want to be Jeremy, the report guy, or does he want to be Jeremy, the guy we can ask about when we need to get data out? Jeremy, who knows how to add the business logic. Jeremy, who knows how to present the data. Jeremy, who can understand that, okay, we've actually presented it. How can we actually get it to the other system? Or to look at it from a totally different perspective, how can Jeremy be someone who can create business value, not on a technical level only, but on a lot of different aspects, which is really important in terms of data-driven culture. I mean, there's so many things, you can kind of put this on, but you can see it's so much more than SQL, DAX, Power BI, these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's these kind of things that I spend I spend so much time on this. And this is kind of like where I have kind of put a lot of my efforts and time in terms of communication, understanding. I'm like literally when I sit in meetings, I actually don't say that much. I just sit and listen, and I'm just having this in my mind, and I'm just saying, okay, that goes into that box, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Okay, this. What are the things that are stopping the process? Okay, this is the stuff. We got to fix this. I know you want to talk about this. So you want to talk about the beautiful bar charts. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about why you guys are doing this manual mapping. That's what I want to talk about. And then they're not, no, we really want beautiful reports, but I'm like, I get that, but I want to talk about this. I know if we get that, it's going to enable a bunch of other things. So that's really kind of how I break it down.
Gotcha. No, like I think that breaks it down really well. And then you can also go back to them and say, here's the value that we got out of approaching this project. Say like, okay, we gained a lot more than just this. We gained all these extra different integration steps doing that. And you can also apply it to different parts of the business once they're ready for it.
Yeah. And this is something that you can take anywhere you go. It has nothing to do with tools. This is purely process, thought process, enablement, data culture, culture building, giving, setting expectations. It's making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be able to process, to be able to make the process flow.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one thing that is so underrated whenever you talk about it, especially at the entry level, is that building that data culture and making it to where your products are useful and understood and throughout the company. Because it's great if you know it, but if nobody else is able to use it, then all that value was lost basically, because what are people doing with it? Data is great, but gotta get the value somewhere.
Okay, good. That's a good use case. I wasn't sure what to expect. I want to end it off with a quick sync on what I want to do next time. And I haven't told you this before now, which is perfect. So what I want to do next time, and you can think about it, is I want to find a data set. I'm going to give you the data set before we meet. I'm going to take the same data set. You're going to make a dashboard. I'm going to make a dashboard.
Okay.
And then the first goal is I want you to make what you perceive as a good dashboard. Okay. And then at the end of that session, I'm going to read you a use case. Okay. Then at the end of, I'm going to look at your dashboard. We're going to look at my dashboard. Me versus you now. And then I'm going to read you a use case. And I want us to meet a week later. I want to see how do you change that dashboard now that you know what the use case is.
Gotcha. Okay. That's really cool. Yeah.
Just to kind of see, are you going to make a lot of, just to see what happens to the dashboard and your impression of what it needs to be. Just solve that use case.
So that is an example of how I break down a data use case. I don't always do it the same way, it depends on the use case. But this gives a good insight into some of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm trying to create a good process, all the way from the beginning to the end. If you have any questions, then you can leave those in the comment section. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next.